All right, welcome back to the channel. It's your boy Fanon, and in this video, I'm going to talk about something that I heard through the grapevine, through the boxing conversation on the internet, that Canelo Alvarez may drop his WBO 168-pound belt if Demetrius Andrade becomes the mandatory. Ridiculous. Let's talk about that in this video. Welcome back to the channel. It's your boy Fanon. Before I get into the subject matter of the video, please make sure to like, share, subscribe to the video. It would be greatly appreciated. And thank you to everybody that continues to support the channel. It is much, much appreciated. Thank you very, very much. All right, man. I get called Canelo Alvarez, a Canelo Alvarez hater a lot. And I'm sure by the time some of y'all read this, read the title of this video, you're already going to write Canelo hater in the comment section. In this particular instance, I don't care. I have never been a Canelo Alvarez hater. I've thought very highly of Canelo Alvarez throughout his career. There are some things that I have not liked. Specifically, you know, the fact that he has tested positive for Clenbuterol, and there are several fights that I would like to see Canelo Alvarez have, because I've been a Canelo Alvarez fan for so long. And specifically, what I mean is guys that were at 154 pounds when he was at 154 pounds that are champions to this day, guys that are at 160 pounds when he's at 160 pounds and are champions to this day. I would like to see what Canelo Alvarez would do in the ring with them. I'm not trying to discount the positive things and the accomplishments that he's had in the sport of boxing. At the same time, however, there are fighters out there who he has been in the position to fight that I would like to see him fight. Now, Canelo Alvarez and his fans are always talking about legacy, 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 legacy. Got it. You're doing this for your legacy. You're doing that for your legacy. However, I would like to interject and tell people that your legacy is what other people say your legacy is. That counts in your legacy. The things that you do and the things that you don't do. If what is going around about Canelo Alvarez is true, I'm not saying that it's true. Do not know 100% that it is true, but it sounds like, you know, like my grandma might say, it sounds a whole lot of like right to me, which is that Canelo Alvarez might actually be ducking Demetrius Andrade again. Now, you guys can say what you want to say about what you think about Demetrius Andrade as a fighter, this, that, and the other thing to deflect, but facts are facts. If Demetrius Andrade, who was a WBO champion at the same time Canelo at 160 pounds, at the same time that Canelo Alvarez was a 3-belt holder at 168 pounds, and Canelo Alvarez chooses not to fight Demetrius Andrade for undisputed, right? Watch it. Step 1, Demetrius Andrade is the WBO champion. Canelo Alvarez is the WBA, the WBC, and the IBF champion at 160 pounds. That is one fight away from being the undisputed champion, and the only person he needed to fight for undisputed was Demetrius Andrade. He did not go for undisputed because he didn't want to fight Demetrius Andrade. If he goes up to 168 pounds, and right now he is the undisputed champion at 168 pounds, right? But Demetrius Andrade, according to what I've heard from Eddie Hearn and other people, is considering moving up to 168 pounds. If he moves up to 168 pounds, because he's the WBO champion, he has the right to fight the WBO champion at the weight class above him immediately to become the mandatory. And you've seen that happen with Top Rank multiple times, where Shakur Stevenson moves up from 126 pounds to 130 pounds and gets the fight with the WBO champion, Jamel Herring. You saw it with Terrence Crawford when Terrence Crawford was the 135-pound champion, and he moved up and got the WBO champion at 140. He moved up again and got the WBO champion at 147 pounds. This is something that happens regularly with the WBO. If Canelo Alvarez were to drop the WBO, specifically not to fight Demetrius Andrade, do not talk to me anymore. Or let me put it this way. It is unreasonable to think that he would do that if he didn't worry about what would go on in the ring with Demetrius Andrade. Now, I'm going to parallel this situation with Canelo Alvarez and Demetrius Andrade to somebody else who was calling out somebody and was getting treated like a joke when he was calling out the #1 pound-for-pound fighter in the world. And that is Antonio Tarver. Antonio, the Magic Man Tarver. When he was at 175 pounds, he lost a fight. I do believe it was to a guy named Harden. I can't remember the first name. And in order to be the mandatory for Roy Jones Jr. Roy Jones Jr. didn't fight him. He wound up beating the guy that beat Antonio Tarver. And so Antonio Tarver got himself back into contention. Roy Jones Jr. moved all the way up to heavyweight, beat Andy Ruiz for the heavyweight title. Beat John Ruiz for the heavyweight title. And then at the press conference for that fight, Antonio Tarver was calling out Roy Jones Jr., getting in Roy Jones Jr.'s face, talking about how he'd been ducking him his whole career and how he didn't want to fight him and how Antonio Tarver knew he had his number. Now, Antonio Tarver was from Florida, and so was Roy Jones Jr. They were in the amateurs at the same time, around each other the whole same time. But most people thought Roy Jones Jr., the #1 pound-for-pound fighter in the world, would beat Antonio Tarver, and the attitude was like, Antonio Tarver, go away. You're not on the same level of Roy Jones Jr. Well, what happens when Antonio Tarver fights Roy Jones Jr.? Because to the credit of Roy Jones Jr., he takes the challenge. What happens to him? Antonio Tarver gets I think he might have lost on a draw. It was either a draw or a fight that people thought was he got a gift in, or Roy Jones Jr. got in a gift the first time. And then the second time, Antonio Tarver knocked out Roy Jones Jr. and proved that no matter what people said about the records of Tarver and his accomplishments versus the accomplishments of Roy Jones Jr., that when you get two fighters in the ring that know each other very well, and doesn't matter if a guy moves up in weight class and leaves that guy in that weight class, he very well may lose to that fighter. And that is what it's looking like, in my opinion, with Canelo Alvarez and Demetrius Andrade. Demetrius Andrade is a very awkward fighter. He's an undefeated southpaw with championships in 2 weight divisions. Do not be surprised if he gets in there with Canelo Alvarez and he's able to beat Canelo Alvarez. And if Canelo Alvarez does this again, either because the first time he didn't want undisputed because Demetrius Andrade was involved in it. If he gives up undisputed because Demetrius Andrade's involved in it, I'm sorry, that is a serious mark on that man's legacy, because really, Demetrius Andrade looks a lot more like Erislandy Lara than any of the fighters that Canelo Alvarez has fought to date. And I believe that their hesitancy to fight that man has something to do with the fact that either they don't want to look bad in a fight with him, or they think that man can win that fight. That's my take on the matter. Y'all can think what you want to think. But anyway, you let me know what you think in the comment section. And with that, I'm out. Peace.